to ask, and this is crazy, but if you were to ask 100 people on the street, like, what's your purpose?
Hmm.
Probably 99.9 wouldn't know. And you wouldn't ever leave your house not knowing where you're going to drive. You wouldn't just drive. You
Hmm.
have the GPS, you got the coordinates, you know where you're going. But so many people are living their life, but they really don't solidly know what their purpose is. So if you don't know what your
Hmm.
purpose is, then how do you have a purposeful life? I think that's what a lot of people are missing. And when they do find their purpose, and it has to be about something bigger than them. Our purpose can't just be like, I want to make a bunch of money.
But why? Welcome to today's episode of Influence by Design. I'm your host, Samantha Riley, and today we're going to dive deep into the topic of purpose and what a lack of having purpose does to your business, and also what really understanding what motivates you and your purpose will help fuel you forwards. This is going to be a great conversation, and I'd love to welcome Steve Hochman to the show. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, thanks, Samantha. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really looking forward to this conversation. We've had a great chat before we hit record. I'd love you to start off by telling us what is it that you do now?
Sure. What I do now is I own a company called OC Fit. And so I own fitness boot camps. So, great, awesome hit workouts where people go and get their butts kicked and get into shape. And I also coach people online with nutrition, fitness, and mindset.
Love it. Now, you've actually
Mhm.
been doing this for quite a while, but you did have a little bit of a, let's call it a hiccup, a little bit of a gap in between. Can you take us back and give us a little bit of your origin story and what happened before where you are today?
Yeah. So I was done with football in college. And I was about almost 300 pounds and I was really unhealthy. I had a lot of anxiety. I really didn't have a purpose in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my friend actually, we used to call him Fat Albert because I mean, fat, but he was a football player like me. He was a year ahead of me and he became a microbiologist chemist. And I ran into him when I was all done and I was, super overweight and he had a six pack. And I was like, all right, Albert, what did you do? And he taught me about the glycemic index, which we could get into later. And he really taught me some high level nutrition. This is 25 years ago. So this is a
Uh-huh.
long time. And I basically applied what I learned from him and put my own spin on it. And I got really lean really fast and really super fit super fast. And everybody around me at just a local gym noticed. People started asking me to help them. And, within about a year and a half, I actually I had a seven-figure personal training studio. From there, I started opening up some of the first indoor fitness boot camps that existed. At the
Hmm.
time, everyone else did them in the park. They would promote them for 4 weeks, and then they would sell that like a 6 week boot camp. And with my group personal training, I was one of the first group personal trainers, and I was one of the first trainers to use auto debit. Trainers always sold packages.
Mm.
Problem is, you sell a package of 12 sessions, and you think it's going to last a month and people cancel, they don't come in. Next thing you know, you don't get paid for like 2 months. And I just made a membership. And back then they didn't have Stripe. None of these, this is like in 1999, and so
Yeah.
nobody was using auto debit back then. And I started just doing, memberships to my personal training. And it just really grew. I had 100 personal training clients. I had I was doing about 250,000 a year. My studio was doing seven figures. And I started opening up these boot camps in gymnastics and cheerleading centers because they're closed in the daytime.
Hmm.
So very little rent. They would let me basically have all my stuff there and have these boot camps. So I opened up six-figure boot camps in 6 months. I opened up a six-figure boot camp every month, used a lot of my guerrilla marketing and strategies. And then I ended up partnering with someone who had a big following, and we created a company called Fit Body Bootcamp, and we turned my bootcamp business model into a franchise. It became the biggest franchise in the world for boot camps, and I ended up selling my half of that company. I started a new company called OC Fit, and I opened up six local locations. And about 2 years ago, I started really just coaching people online as well. And yeah, that's where we're at today.
Love it. No, there was a little gap in there where which you didn't mention then, that I've heard about, where you built all of these businesses up and then you kind of took some time out. Can you tell us about what happened there?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, like when I was like 5 years old, I just realized like something was off with me. And it turned out that I actually had Tourette syndrome really bad as a kid. And it back then no one really knew what it was. It wasn't like now where it's kind of, I guess, popular. Like people just kind of know about it. And so I was a real outcast. Like it really kind of put me behind socially. And school was really, really tough for me. And so I guess I was always really driven, but maturity wise, like in a lot of ways, I was very, very much behind. And everyone like really thought I was stupid, to be honest with you. Like
Mm,
even though I was a great athlete, like just because I was weird, I would get picked last. Like I ended up being an
mm.
all-American athlete in high school, got a full scholarship to University of Miami, who was national champions. But that same person got picked last all until high school, just because I didn't know how to be socially, I guess,
How to
like
fit in.
I didn't, yeah, I didn't know how to fit in. I didn't know how to get along. I just was just so like I never really had friends, so I didn't know what to do when I was around people.
Mm,
And so the reason why I'm telling you this is because so I was really behind and thought of as really dumb for a long time. And then when I started my personal training business, it got really big really fast. I went from literally being homeless to owning a or a seven-figure business within 2 years.
hmm
And so that was cool. I was getting like success. I was leading. I had 40 trainers that worked that paid me rent and that I coached to grow their business under
hmm
my group of Next Level Fitness, chiropractors, massage therapists, all sorts of things in my six-figure personal training center. And that was really great. The leadership that I was able to practice was awesome. And but when I created Fit Body Bootcamp, when I co-founded that, and I started speaking on stages and started back then getting really popular on social media, honestly, I grew a little too fast. I didn't really know what my purpose was yet. And I didn't just like people gain weight and don't realize they're gaining weight. And all of a sudden they're like, what happened? I was sliding way off course and losing who I was because I didn't have this solid foundation and the solid purpose. And one day I just kind of woke up and I really didn't like who I was, and I could see where I was heading with all this stuff. And I got off all social. I sold my part of Fit Body Bootcamp. I got off social media for 10 years, and I really just started opening up I kind of restarted, and I opened up a new brand that I created of fitness boot camps. I kept it a little smaller. I mean, six isn't that small, but smaller. And I just really worked on my personal development, and I found my purpose, and I found the gaps and the things that I was missing. And I think everything happens for a reason, because if you don't
mm,
go through, you can't help other people. So
100%.
I'm grateful for all the challenges. I'm grateful I had Tourette's as a kid. I'm grateful for all the things I went through, because it puts me in a really unique position now to help people a lot more than I would be able to if I didn't go through all this stuff.
Yeah. And I love that. I'm a very big believer that things happen for us, not to us. And when we can get the story or understand that and understand what it means for us, it can make us so much stronger. And like you said, the more of these learnings we can get and the more gratitude we can get, we can help so many more people with that. When you stopped, what was the journey like for you? What came up for you? What did you think you wanted to do in life compared to when you took that pause? What you really wanted in life?
Well, I always enjoyed helping people, whether it's coaching people in fitness or in business. When I'm helping someone is when I feel the best. That's
Hmm.
when time doesn't even exist. And so I always knew that was what I like to do. But what I discovered was, this is what I also tell my coaching clients, is that you have to have a purpose that's bigger than yourself. And like, here's a great example. So like I said, everything relates back to fitness. So let's say you're going to start working out. You're like, okay, I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning, go to the gym, work out, get it done before work starts, before the day starts. And you look outside and it's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, it's just horrible outside. And you're like, you know what? I'll
Mm,
work out. I'll work out tomorrow. Now, same scenario. It's cold, it's windy, it's raining outside, but you got to go pick your kid up from school. There's no way you're not going to do that. It's just
Mm,
because there's a one for you and one for a purpose bigger than you. And what I realized is my purpose was to give the most. I know that sounds broad. I realize that it's to give the most value to the most people in the most ways. But the
mm,
magical thing is when I discovered that is that, and the thing is like a lot of people think like living a life of service means sacrificing yourself, and it's really the opposite. So if I'm going to give the most value to the most people the most ways, and I really mean it, like I really could measure everything I'm doing with can I give this as value to someone? What it forces me or anyone to do is to be the best version of themselves in all those areas. So you can't give that which you don't have. So it's
mm,
like, and I go back to parenting, and I understand a lot of parents don't look at it this way. They don't realize this is going on. But, I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and I have a 3.5-year-old. And when I take my 3.5-year-old to preschool, I see a lot of really overweight parents.
mm-hmm,
And right behind those overweight parents, I see kids that are overweight too. And so the thing is, you can't give that which you don't have.
mm.
So you ask these parents, what's the most important thing in the world to you? And they'll say, my kids. I'll do anything
Yeah.
for my kids. And I go, well, how do you like being overweight? I don't like it. I'm not confident. I'm embarrassed. I just don't feel good about myself. Plus, the doctor says my blood pressure's up, my health isn't good. I know I'm not going to live as long, all this stuff. And I go, well, do you want to give your kids health, confidence, fitness, and not pass your pain on to them? And they're like, of course. Well, how are you going to do that if you haven't figured it out? And
Mm,
I think that's just a great example. Like for me, it's not even about being lean or being fit. It's about what I can give to others. And so how do I help my kids? How do I help my clients? How do I help my friends and the people that are in my program if I'm not that version?
mm,
And the same thing with my relationship with my wife. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I had a horrible marriage before, divorce, cheating, the whole thing. I'm not trying to say like I'm some like perfect guy. I feel like now I'm a lot different. This is like 10 years ago. But
yep.
how do I give that as value to someone if let's say I'm having an argument with my wife. Everyone gets an argument once in a while. Well, in the moment of that argument, like my ego wants to win the argument, but my bigger purpose wants to give value of how to solve this in a loving way and move past it in the best and most positive way. So I have to
Mm,
push my ego and I have to find a solution that I could give to others. And that example is in every aspect of my life, of anyone's life. And so, sorry, I know I'm going on for a long
no,
time here,
no.
but I feel like if you were to ask, and this is crazy, but if you were to ask 100 people on the street, like, what's your purpose?
Mm-hmm,
Probably 99.9 wouldn't know. And you wouldn't ever leave your house not knowing where you're going to drive. You wouldn't just drive,
mm-hmm,
have your GPS, you got the coordinates, you know where you're going. But so many people are living their life, but they really don't solidly know what their purpose is. So if you don't know what
mm-hmm,
your purpose is, then how do you have a purposeful life?
mm,
And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. And when they do find their purpose, and it has to be about something bigger than them. Yeah,
mm.
like my purpose can't just be like, I want to make a bunch of money, like
But why?
well, the reason why is because if it's about you, like when people say, I want to get fit for me, right? Well, okay. You also want to drink alcohol because that's what you want to do. So you want to get fit and you want to drink alcohol. You want to be lean, but you want to eat that cake. You want to work out, but you also want to sleep in. So if it's about you, you're constantly battling you. Sometimes this part of you wins, sometimes that part of you wins. But when it's for a bigger purpose, like the example I gave about picking your kid up from school, there's no negotiation. It's non-negotiable. And that's why it's very important to have a purpose that's bigger than yourself that you would never say no to or let down. And it's
Totally.
it's a big one, man. People overlook this all the time.
Totally. And when I said but why, I wasn't saying but why and asking
Oh,
the
you want to
question. I
know?
was I was saying no, I was saying like, but why? But it's because there are people that want to make money, right? But the next question to ask yourself is, but why is that? Because it's the
Well,
next thing that's actually the purpose, right?
and it's okay to make money. So like you should make a
Totally.
lot of money. So again, how can I help someone make a lot of money if I don't make a lot of money? So like
Yeah.
again, like if I want to give the most value to the most people the most ways, I have to have an amazing relationship with my wife. I have to have the best relationship with my kids. I have to run a successful business. I have to make a certain amount of money. I have to be have a certain level of health, fitness, strength, confidence. Like all these things you can't give if you don't have. So
Mm,
making money is part of it. It's just attached to a bigger purpose. But what's really
absolutely.
cool about living that purpose driven life and the way I'm describing it is you actually get to live an amazing life.
Yeah, totally. What was so you obviously you knew you didn't have purpose, you were going down a road that you didn't like. What did you tap into to find your purpose? Or what was the journey like to take your mindset to a different place?
Yeah, I think we all have this thing that's called a conscience. And a lot of people think a conscience means like if you steal something, it'll weigh on your conscience. But the truth is your conscience is like a GPS that tells you everything. If you eat something that doesn't align with your conscience, you have regret after you eat
Mm,
it. You treat someone in a way that doesn't align with your conscience, you have regret after that conversation. And your conscience is involved in every single thing you do. And really, I just started listening to my conscience. I just
mm,
decided I'm going to completely listen to my conscience. I'm going to do the things that make me proud, and I'm going to eliminate the things that give me regret. And I'm going to be very aware. In fact, I started journaling when this whole first thing started happening, and most people journal about good things. I would
hmm.
only journal about what I regret, and at the end of the week, I would see what the patterns are. I say, wow, I
Oh,
regretted that
wow.
like 5 times this week. Okay, that's something I need to eliminate. That absolutely doesn't align with my conscience. And that journaling was a great tool for me. It's kind of like logging in your food. When you're logging your food, it makes you think about what you're going to eat
Yeah.
before you eat it. When you journal what you regret, you're very aware of how aligned you are with your conscience. And a lot of people tune out their conscience and they want like the answer. They're like, what's the answer? How do I move forward? It's like, well, first, you're not even aligned with your conscience. You're not even
Mm,
aligned with who you really are. Your conscience is guiding you to your real self. And so if you're not aligned with your conscience, it doesn't matter what I'm going to tell you next because you're not even you right now. You suck at
yeah.
being, you're not good at being you, you know? And so yeah, that was the catalyst is I just really tuned into my conscience and everything I did, eliminated what I regret and amplified what made me proud.
I love that. I've never heard journaling in that way before. From a mindset perspective, was there a moment where you looked at that and went, oh my goodness, like I did all those bad things, and you almost, I guess, like talked down to yourself or reprimanded yourself about that?
Yes, of course. Like everybody looks back on like your behavior and actions that you're not proud of, and it's easy to get down on yourself. But it's funny. I was actually this is like a long time ago, but there's a movie called Pumping Iron. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a
No.
famous it's a famous movie that was filmed, I think, in the 70s with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was
Oh,
competing for
my husband talks about it all the
yes,
time.
yes.
Yeah.
And then they made a movie called like Raw Iron. It was like the making of Pumping Iron, and they interviewed
Uh-huh.
everyone like 50 years later or something like that. And I remember, Arnold did a lot of things in that movie where he kind of humiliated people and like set them up for things. And they asked him, they go, do you regret and feel bad about the things you did? And I remember he said, no. He goes, that was my thought process back then. I have a different thought process back now. I have a different thought process. So that was who I was then. This is who I am now. Why would I look back and regret that? And I remember thinking like, when you have an iPhone and it has glitches in it, and then you get an upgrade to a new version, like you download the new, the latest
The new
upgrade and it
iOS.
fixes
Yeah.
everything. You don't ever think about the previous version. You don't go, man, that sucked though. That previous version had all these problems. You're just on the present version. And so
Mm,
I think it's okay to look at your past and be like, yeah, that was pretty bad, But if you focus on it, it's kind of like driving, right? So in
yeah.
life, you're moving forward when you're driving. So what do you do with your rearview mirror? You glance at it. You glance at it just to see what's back there. If you stare at your rearview mirror when you're driving, you're going to crash. And I think
Yeah.
if you stare at your past when you're moving forward in life, you're going to crash as well. So I glance at it, but I don't focus on it.
I love that metaphor. I think that's really great because it is okay to look back and go, all right, well, I didn't like that. But none of us, let me say that a different way, where we do the best that we can with what we've got at the time. So I look back and think, with my very first business, I was only 20 years old. My leadership was pretty poor, but I didn't have anything to we're not taught leadership at school. I didn't have anything to reference from. I didn't know what leadership was. So, and you're right, I look back and go, that was pretty poor, but don't sort of look back and regret it, but rather learn from it and say, okay, well, those things that I didn't bring out the best in my people. It meant that we couldn't go where we needed to with our business, and let's learn what we need to do so we can move forward. So I really love that.
And I know it's not easy, it depends on what it is too, like obviously, and this is a horrible example. I mean, this is like horrible, probably going to ruin everyone's day right now listening to this, but like, if, it happens sometimes, like a parent will forget their kid in their car and their kid will die, right?
Mm.
It'd be very difficult to not carry guilt for the rest of your life about that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With that being said, at some point, the truth is, and the harsh reality is, the only way to honor that kid is to be the best version of yourself and make a difference in this life. Like you can never feel bad enough. I have some coaching clients that carry a lot of guilt because they have family members in prison. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, and when their life starts going really good, they feel guilt because they know that their family member can't enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell them, like, you can't feel bad enough to make anyone else feel better.
Mm.
Like you literally can't feel bad enough where it affects them in a positive way. They can't feel your guilt that you're carrying around. The only person that can feel it is you. And really the way to honor them and the only way to put yourself in a position to positively impact them is to elevate yourself to the best potential you possibly can,
Totally.
and so it's just, I know it's easier said than done. And sometimes I feel guilty for a moment of things in the past, of course. But the truth is, it's just not an effective thought. It's not an effective emotion.
Mm.
And really, instead of feeling guilt, put the work in to just become better.
Yeah, this was a topic that I covered in a recent episode with Jacqueline Nagel, and we were talking about, when things don't go well in business. And she was saying there was a moment that she realized that she was punishing herself for things that had gone bad in business. And there was this moment where she was like, well, this isn't serving anyone. Things went bad, but I need to be able to rise up, and be really successful to be able to put that behind me. And I think it's just such a powerful thought to be able to, and well, also, and a powerful action to, notice that that's happening and to make the change, like you're saying.
I had a period of time where I had a pretty big setback in business. I was starting another business that I was really focused on. I wasn't at my fitness business. I just wasn't present there a lot. The numbers kept going up, so I was looking at the result and I was judging my performance based on the result, which was great. But I had a manager that did some shady stuff and costed us 20,000 a month. So not 20,000, but 20,000 a month, right? So, about a quarter million a year, month after month after month. And during that time, I'm going to preface this by saying nobody's perfect. Some of that
No.
time I was pissed. Some of that time I was stressed. Some of that time I just felt like shit. But 90% of the time, 90% of the time, I was grateful. I was grateful that this lesson exposed a weakness that I didn't realize I had. It taught me something that I needed to know. It gave me an opportunity to get better and to be more aware of things. And it also created a story for me that I could then share with other entrepreneurs, and I could tell them how I pulled myself out of it. And I think so the whole time I was really just saying good. I'm like, good, good. And it got worse and worse and worse. I was like, good. This is part of my story. Good. This is going to help me help someone else. Good. When I pull myself out of this, now I'm going to be able to help other people do the same. And I'm going to be able to really motivate them and encourage them by telling them, look, I was there too. This is what happened to
Mm.
me. And this is what I did to get out of it. This is the thought process I had. And, the thought process also, a lot of people visualize, in business, a lot of people visualize. And I think a lot of people visualize wrong. They visualize what they want. And when you focus on what you want, what you're actually focusing on is what you don't have. And so really what you're screaming and what that antenna in your brain is signals are putting out is lack, 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 lack. And the more you want something, the more you're focused on that you don't have that something. And something that I do, and I I always tell people to do this, is whatever you want to achieve, you should have the feeling of as if you've already achieved it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easier said than done. But I mean, literally, like, oh, you want to be in this car, then you visualize you're in that car right now and how cool it feels. Oh, you want your revenue to be out there, you in your mind, you are at that revenue. Because what happens is it reprograms your brain. You know, you have this part that's called the reticular activation system that filters out all the things that aren't the most important things. Like, you can only focus on a couple things at once. And if all your senses dumped all the information into your brain at the same time, you'd go crazy. So there is a filter in your mind. So what is it filtering? You know, and it filters things that don't pertain to your most dominant thoughts. And if your most dominant thoughts are what you want, what you're actually saying is, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. And then it finds matches of things to not have those things. And when you visualize and feel and believe you already do have them, then it finds matches to that. And it's crazy because you really are limited to what you could see, feel, and hear by that part of your brain that filters out what isn't the most important, which is pretty
Mm.
crazy. Mhm.
Love it so much. Now, you've written a book called The Three. I'm super intrigued. What is The
Yeah.
Three?
So when I got really lean, the way I did it, the main thing that I did was I focused on something called the glycemic index. It's something that for some reason it's like never talked about. It should be taught in schools. Everybody should know about it. If you really want to put something on labels on foods, you should put the glycemic index on the label. So what it is, it's a rating scale, for how much glucose, which is blood sugar, enters your bloodstream after you eat a certain food or a certain ingredient. So for reference, table sugar is a 65, a piece of broccoli is like a 10. So
Mm-hmm.
what I found over 25 years of doing this and working with thousands of people and me transforming myself for 2.5 decades is 25 is the magic number. When you're above 25, what happens is glucose enters your bloodstream, your body releases insulin to clear that glucose. It then opens up your cells like a little key, absorbs the glucose into your cells where it's converted to fat. Now, the crazy thing about insulin is it absorbs everything. So if you're having something over 25 in the glycemic index and fat, now you have glucose and fat in your bloodstream. Now both of those are getting stored into your cells. And because people aren't aware of this, all most of society does to lose weight is reduce their calories. They're just so
Mm-hmm.
calorie focused. I don't focus on calories with anybody, and people can't understand it. They can't believe I'm able to get people six packs and lean and without ever touching their calories. And the thing is, there's so many hidden ingredients. Also, like Samantha, like I'm gonna give you an example. Like if you go to Starbucks and you get, do they have Starbucks in Australia?
Oh God, I don't even know if they still
All right.
do.
Well,
But
here in the
we
States,
know, we all know
Starbucks,
what Starbucks is.
you know what it is. So here's a typical thing. You get let's say you get the vanilla sugar-free sweetener and you're trying to get leaner and be healthy. And the thing is that the third ingredient, it's something called maltodextrin.
Mhm.
So if you don't know the glycemic index, then maltodextrin doesn't mean anything to you. Remember I said table sugar is 65? Maltodextrin averages about 130 on the glycemic
Oh,
index.
whoa.
So even though there's no sugar in it, you get massive amounts of glucose that enter your bloodstream, massive amounts of insulin that then stores that glucose. And I mean, there's a million things like that. Like there's so many hidden ingredients. There's obvious ingredients too, but there's a lot of hidden ingredients out there that people have no idea about. So they're not getting results. So all they do, oh, I got to cut my calories. And then they go to like a nutrition coach who says like, well, I got to put you on 1,200 calories. We got to go in a calorie deficit. It's calories in, calories out. But it's not true because certain things you eat, it's like I always get in these like debates with these people where I'm like, okay, so if it's calories in, calories out, then I should be able to eat, 1,500 calories of ice cream and I should be leaner than if I ate 2,000 calories of chicken and broccoli, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, well, no, but why? And they don't quite understand how the mechanism works for some reason because no one talks about this. What's crazy too is all of type 2 diabetes in the entire world could be completely cured.
Mm-hmm.
Completely, not type 1. Type 1's genetic,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's only 5% of the world has type 1. 95% has type 2. All it is an overuse of insulin. And so your body stops responding to insulin. So you have high levels of blood sugar, blood glucose. And then because you're not responding to insulin, you have to take insulin. When you stay under 25 on the glycemic index, you don't need insulin as much, and your body becomes very sensitive to insulin. So it starts to work again. Like I've cured hundreds of people with diabetes, easy, but doctors never talk about this.
Mm.
And you learn this in school. I mean, it should be the first, one of the first things you learn in health class, but yeah, so I call it the three because I have three rules. That's rule number one. I have two other rules, and then I have three accelerators to make those rules happen even faster. And people follow the three rules and they're able to eat. The other thing is too, like there's almost anything you could eat and make it taste amazing following the three rules. So you want fried chicken, like I use the air fryer all the time. Instead of using, wheat flour, which is like a 80 on the glycemic index, which is higher than sugar, and then you have all the fat, and now you're having the insulin absorb the fat and the sugar. I just use almond flour and egg, and I put it in the air fryer. So almond flour has a glycemic index of 10. You don't have that insulin that's absorbing all that fat and glucose, and you could have your fried chicken and get really lean. It's really easy. So that's why I wrote a book, because I know a lot of people need to know this, to
I
know this
love
stuff.
that so much. What's your dream for the book? What's your biggest dream for what would happen with the book?
Yeah, so the book for me is, I have two parts of the dream. One part is that book just gets in people's hands and they read it and it changes their life. And I'm able to fulfill my dream of providing the most value in the most ways to the most people. So in that book, it's not just nutrition, it's mindset, all my mindset stuff, all my workout stuff. It's like pretty much everything. And then the other part of it is, I would love to be a best-selling author, and I'd love for it to open doors where I could get on bigger platforms and help more people. I mean,
Mm,
it's just now it's a matter of just exposing this new method to more people. And that's it. I just want to make a difference in the world. Like I always have this vision. You see three people walking down the street, and imagine if above their head there's like a digital number of how many people in the world they positively affected. And let's say you get someone that like he's like, has $100 million, but he got it, investing in crypto and it took off, and maybe he has a five over his head. He helped five people. And then you have someone that's just a regular person, a regular average person. Maybe they have like a 30 over their head. They've helped 30 people in a real impactful way. And then you have someone that has like a million over their head. They've affected a million people in a positive way. To me, that's the person I want to talk to. That's the person that I want to be like. That's the currency that means the most to me. How many people have you positively affected in the world? And the money and all that stuff, it comes with it. The more
mm.
value you provide, the more people you help get what they want, the more you get what you want. And that's how it works. But I'm really just interested in providing a significant value and knowing that while I was here on this earth, I made a difference.
I love that. Steve, thanks so much for coming and chatting with us today. Oh, where can people get a copy of that book? Definitely need to talk about that.
It's coming out. So it's coming out in about 3 or 4 months. So it's going through the final edits and all that stuff right now. This is my first book. So I don't have an exact date yet because I'm still learning the process of how a publisher works and all that stuff. But anyone could go on my Instagram at stevehochman.driven. And as that book's, obviously I put a lot of nutrition and mindset stuff on there, but as the book's getting closer to coming out, of course, I'm going to be talking about it nonstop.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll put the links for social channels underneath wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're on. Just scroll down and you'll see the links there to connect with Steve. Thanks so much for coming and sharing your story and your inspiration today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me, Samantha.